Next steps on abortion and marijuana. Welcome to Columbus on the Record. I'm Matthew Rand, sitting in for Mike Thompson. Still stung by the passage of Issue 1, the strongest opponents to abortion rights are trying to find ways to go around the voter-approved amendment that guarantees those rights. A small group of lawmakers has proposed a law they say would strip Ohio judges of their power to interpret the abortion rights amendment. That would include Ohio Supreme Court justices. Skeptics abound. House Speaker Jason Stephens cited separation of powers lessons we all learned on Schoolhouse Rock. He says he's not seriously considering the proposal, and it looks like the Ohio Supreme Court will soon be examining the amendment's approval on Ohio's 6-week abortion ban. Joe Ingles, we'll start with you. We'll get to the Supreme Court in a moment, but first of all, just give us the overview of this proposal to strip the courts away from of their powers.
Sure. Last week, after the decision was made by voters, the side that opposed Issue 1 came out, and there were several things that were floated, but there was a lot of hurt, and I think Aaron Baer, who's the president of Citizens for Christian Virtue, said they were heartbroken, and so there was a lot of emotion. Okay, so I want to make sure that's clear. But what happened was some people came out and said, well, let's bury them in court suits. And then other members of the legislature said, and a few said, let's take all the authority away from the courts to deal with the abortion amendment. And what you were talking about, Speaker Stephens, his comment came when he was asked about the constitutionality of that. There is separation of powers in the Constitution, and he called it Schoolhouse Rock kind of stuff because you can't really have that. So now, a lot of people who opposed Issue 1 are looking for other ways that they can try to make effective change, but it doesn't look like they're going to be going back to voters anytime soon to do another constitutional amendment. It's more likely that they will try to pass laws that will maybe help with other areas that they agree with.
And that's a change from what we heard before the election.
It is. It is. Before the election, you remember Governor DeWine was coming back and saying, hey, Ohio voters, if you approve or if you vote down this constitutional amendment, then, we have this heartbeat bill or the 6-week ban, whatever we're calling it these days, that's sitting out there in front of the Supreme Court. And if you approve that, then we will add rape and incest exceptions, or at least look at adding those. And we're not really sure if they could have. But anyway, there was some promises made to try to get people to vote it down, but it passed by almost the same amount that it passed in Michigan. So now we have abortion rights enshrined in Ohio's Constitution starting December 6th or 7th, I think it is.
Bob Clegg, I wanted to ask you, where does this rank, or this is 4 lawmakers proposing this idea. Is this the majority view in the Republican Party, or where does the leadership stand?
Well, it's like what Joe just said. After the election, there was a lot of emotion that came out, and I think some of these members were speaking not from their head but from their heart. I think this Speaker Stephens pretty much said this is going nowhere. I personally have no problems with the courts doing this. In fact, I like the idea that the ultimate arbitrator is going to be the Ohio Supreme Court. I have no problem with them making decisions on how the laws that we've previously, that's what they're going to look at. They're going to look at various laws that we have passed previously and how the passage of this amendment will affect those laws. And I think they're probably the best body to do that.
Brian Rothenberg, I'll ask the same thing to you. Just where do you see this from your side of things?
Well, first of all, I'm just a bill. I'm only a bill, right? It didn't go anywhere. It was a motion and it settled down, but it settled down, I don't think, through, hopefully it was through the maturity of the leadership there. But I do believe when the dust settled and they looked at the actual polling on this, that the polling was overwhelming, that it was even driving in the U.S. Senate race where Sherrod Brown's numbers went up because of this vote. I think cooler heads prevailed because they realized we can't do this in 2024. We're gonna have a bad political year if we do.
Laura Bischoff, I want to get your thoughts as well. Was this a surprise to you, sort of, to see, first of all, this proposal, but then the overarching maybe cooling off of that?
Well, I think the cooling off probably happened after this story made national headlines. It was even in The Guardian. So it kind of gave Ohio a black eye, really. And it is, you know, it is basic civics. There's 3 co-equal branches of government. The legislature makes the laws, the executive branch enforces them, and the judiciary interprets them. And just saying like, okay, the judiciary cannot do this section is kind of silly. I mean, these people are sworn law. They swear to uphold the Constitution, not just the parts that they like.
Okay, and then what is the next step, Joe, when it comes to the Supreme Court weighing in on all of this?
Well, the Supreme Court has asked the parties involved to weigh in on how they think that this new amendment should affect the 6-week ban. A federal court that's looking at transfer agreements, which are written agreements that ambulatory clinics that provide abortion must have with hospitals if something goes wrong. That case is also being considered, and they're asking for the people involved to come back and say how they think that new constitutional amendment affects those laws. And they will, then they'll take it in their own hands and presumably make a decision. So. Which is kind of in the courts. It's
kind of in the courts. A lot of this really has to do with just sort of procedural things that the courts have to sign off on.
Correct.
All right, we'll see what happens next. Ohio's new voter-approved legal marijuana law goes into effect early next month. That is, unless state lawmakers change it. Lawmakers want to make some adjustments, but there is some disagreement on the timing. Senate President Matt Huffman and Governor DeWine are pushing for modifications before the law takes effect December 7th. House Speaker Jason Stephens says he's in no rush. The Speaker says changes to the tax rate or potency of recreational marijuana can come at a later date. Sales are not expected to start until well into 2024. Brian Rothenberg, first of all, I just want to get your take on the passage of this issue. This did not get as much attention from Democrats as issue 1 did.
It didn't, but it didn't really matter because it was really a bipartisan bill. Even counties like Guernsey County, what you'll see is that the marijuana bill just trailed very, very slightly from issue 1. So, I mean, it crossed party lines on both sides of it. It is not a constitutional amendment. It is an initiated statute, which we haven't had in a long time. So they can change aspects of it. I think very clearly Ohioans are supportive of this. So the issue really becomes how you're enforcing it. I think they're talking about where the profits go to. They're talking about putting them into local law enforcement and local jails. Some folks, the THC content, if they want to lower that, you would still have medical marijuana if you wanted to get more. But I think they have to be careful too about tinkering with it. You know, this legislature needs to understand that when you have the full state of Ohio voting on an issue and they make a determination, you have to respect the full state of Ohio. It's just, you can't just keep thumbing your nose at the state and its voters.
I'm curious how much of a change their lawmakers are able to make. Laura, do you want to take that one?
I mean, if they wanted to, they could do a full repeal.
Yeah.
It's the Ohio Revised Code. It's constantly revising. They do run the risk, though, if they do more than tweaking, if they undo or unravel large portions of it, or even were to repeal it, that would undo the will of the voters, as Brian said. And you do that at your own peril. I think that they're probably going to do some changes, some minor changes. I think what's really essential or key is what they do with the tax rate. Because if the tax rate is jacked up too high, then the black market and all those trips to Michigan will continue so that people can get marijuana at a lower cost.
And there's been a lot of conversation, too, about what to do with that tax money as well.
Right. There's some discussion about maybe diverting some of the tax money to building jails or doing police training. You know, there's like a new pool of money, and so there's all kinds of ideas about, you know, what it should be used for. It's mostly prescribed, though, in the law that the voters just voted on.
Bob Clegg, as you know, as we heard others say, you know, this is an issue that did cut across party lines.
Sure.
What's the line that GOP lawmakers are going to be walking here to make sure people in their own party, certainly voters, are happy with the final product?
Yeah, I worked on the constitutional amendment in 2015 to legalize marijuana, and we didn't get it passed. There were
What's
other
different
issues
this time?
When we did it back in 2015, we had a very small group that were eligible to be the growers, and that's caused a problem. And so it didn't get approved this time. And this is the one thing to remember about this. While the actual sales of marijuana is not going to occur for quite a while, because they have to set up the regs and all that. But starting December 7th, you're going to have people growing marijuana in their homes. So there's going to be a rush on grow lights and potting soil and all that kinds of stuff.
It's a whole new ball game, Laura.
I think it's akin to like home brewing.
Yeah.
People who are really into it as a hobby, I think that they'll grow their own. But it's, I think it's harder. It's harder than it looks.
But I'll tell you what, Laura, if the state, and we got some past we can look at, the state dragged their feet on that medical side. And they did the medical side because of what we did in 2015, and they heard our messaging, and they thought, ooh, that medical side's got a pretty good message. So they went ahead with it, but they dragged their feet doing it. And if they drag their feet with implementing this,
sure, then people
are gonna, people are really gonna grow. And I don't know yet if they're gonna do that or not. I think what she was talking about, what Laura was talking about on the tax rates, I think that was the big thing they wanted to go after. I think they wanna make sure they decide, the legislature, how that money's gonna go.
They had a chance to decide all this.
Yeah,
I know, well, that's why the people had to go to the ballot. That's the whole
But
point.
I'll tell you what, the most important thing that needs to happen in this industry is for the federal government to allow banking systems to be involved. There's just too
that's a
much, it's the
problem.
Wild West, and it's just going to become a problem,
Yeah.
and that is not something the state can solve.
That is still the issue. I don't know if there's been much movement on that front.
There was a bill, I think, that's just been introduced on the federal level.
The federal level, I think they're trying to move
Yeah.
it to get it off of the schedule where it would prohibit use of banking systems. But
And with more and more states doing this, they're going to have to. I mean, I think we're getting close to half the states now
Yeah,
are
we're
legalizing
24.
marijuana. So, I mean, you've got to get with it.
Do you see Ohio as being a tipping point on that?
Oh,
on that
yeah. I
scale?
mean, we're the 7th largest state in population. I mean, my gosh, yeah.
All right. Well, moving on, the polls had barely closed last week when new political ads showed up on Ohio's televisions. Republican U.S. Senate candidate Bernie Moreno's ad suggests he's Donald Trump's pick. The former president has not made an endorsement, we should add. Local leaders in East Palestine, meanwhile, have endorsed Matt Dolan. They praised Dolan for his support after the toxic train derailment there. Ohio's primary is March 19th, so we've got a little time there, but Bob, I'm just curious, sort of your overarching view of where things stand in the race right now.
Well, we got some polling just this week that showed head-to-heads between Sherrod Brown and all three of the Republicans. He's losing to Frank LaRose, I think. Or no, Frank LaRose is behind by one.
he's winning now on all three.
Yeah, he's winning on all three.
post-issue.
Frank LaRose is down by one. I think Dolan's by 2, and Bernie Moreno's by 5.
Yes.
And the key, though, is in every single head-to-head, Sherrod Brown is not anywhere near 50%. I think the best he does is 47. And when you've been a career politician in Ohio for the last 50 years and you can't even get to 50%, that means there's a problem. His other big problem is going to be next year. Donald Trump's running. The poll that came out yesterday in Emerson shows him winning Ohio by 12 points. Sherrod Brown has never run in an election for U.S. Senate where the head of the ticket, the Republican, is winning by 12 points. And he's got the albatross of Joe Biden around his neck all of next year. And then the latest thing is this Israeli-Hamas war has created the progressive wing of the Democrat Party to be so Palestinian, pro-Palestinian, to the point where they say they want to go after establishment Democrats who are Israel supporters. Well, that would be Sherrod Brown.
So on the flip side of that,
On the flip side of that, I was going to give obviously the benefit of the doubt here.
on the flip side of that, you will notice that that poll showed that post issue 1, Sherrod Brown had huge growth. Sherrod Brown has always done well with some of the populations that ex-President Trump has done well with. If you look at the polling on the Trump voting, you know, he's just got his level, but you don't know whether it'll shift and have any kind of coattails. You really don't.
Yeah, but Brian, I got a question. Do you think we're going to see Sherrod Brown commercials talking about how he agrees with President Trump on China like Tim Ryan did last year?
I think you're going to see Sherrod Brown talk about what he's done for those populations in Ohio and how he's appealed to those populations in Ohio and how he's fought for those jobs.
I would give him advice in the fact that Tim Ryan did that and only lost by 6 points. Nan Whaley stayed away and she lost by 25.
Well, I think he's got a strong record with those folks that he can already build off of. And, you know, I think anybody who rules Sherrod Brown out is doing it at their own peril. I mean, you know, and in terms of the economy, well, last I checked, the economy in Ohio is run by a governor that's a Republican and has been for a while. So you can't just blame all that.
It's called Bidenflation, not DeWine inflation.
Well, except DeWine is in charge of Ohio's economy. You can't
Well, but
dismiss
people
that.
don't think that. They blame the president, though they don't blame the governor.
So
and you
why
know
would
that.
they blame the U.S. senators? See, same
well,
thing.
because that's
because
he's tied
you say
to the
they
president.
would. Well, you
he's
say
tied
they
to
would,
the
but
president that did the economy
well,
bad.
are you going to blame
Gentlemen,
Rob
I'm
Portman?
curious too how much issue 1 is going to be a bellwether in this race. Whoever ends up being the Republican nominee versus Sherrod Brown.
You saw the numbers. I mean, whether it's on the ballot or not, it's going to be on the ballot in 2024.
Well, then answer this question, Brian. Why was it that Mike DeWine, 4 months after Roe v. Wade was overturned, won by 25 points against a Democrat opponent who made abortion and abortion access a major issue of her campaign?
I would like to point out that we are not, first of all, you guys are talking about candidates. And I think there's going to be a lot of issues by next year that are going to play into this, okay? And it is a year away. I'd like to point that out as well. But I think also when you're comparing with Nan Whaley, the situation, you know, there wasn't a debate between Nan Whaley and Governor DeWine. And we're not seeing, if you look at issue 1, we really didn't see a debate on issue 1. There was, you know, forums and that sort of thing, but not really a debate. So people are having to go out and by and large do their own research on issues or candidates these days. And sometimes someone looks good because they don't know much about them, or something looks good because they don't know much about it. And then when they go in and they start looking at it, then they feel differently. So I think it's really too early for any of us to say that this is how this is going to trend or this is how this is going to work. We don't know what the issues are going to be. We don't know how people are going to interpret them, and we don't know how the candidates are going to be tied to them.
Also, Nan Whaley, she went up against, she was the mayor of Dayton, former mayor of Dayton, which is a pretty small footprint. Yeah. And she went up against Mike DeWine, who's been in office since the 1970s and has held almost every office in state and federal and local government. And, you know, he was coming off a lot of popularity of how he handled the COVID pandemic. So I think her wipeout doesn't necessarily mean that Sherrod Brown is going to have a wipeout as well.
No, but I do think that it shows that abortion usually is a very low priority when it comes to issues, and it's going to be next year because of the economy, and unless something drastically changes, it's inflation, it's the economy. That's by far the #1 issue, and that's what I think they're going to end up debating about next year.
Well, I just go by the numbers, and the numbers show Sherrod Brown grew 4 or 5 points just because of that.
So he was behind all those guys previous
He
to
was
that?
up on 2, and he was down on 1 according to that poll, and he grew 3 to 5 points.
But he couldn't grow beyond 50%.
Well,
Also,
neither is Donald Trump, in nationally.
No, but in Ohio he is.
Bob, I disagree with you.
What?
I think that GOP voters in particular do vote on abortion.
Yeah, and they
I
vote
think-
for the Republican.
I think
If
they vote on abortion and guns. Those
yeah,
are kind of the
well,
the
and if
first
you're
cut.
if you're hardcore on abortion, if that's a really important issue, like your 1 or 2 issue, if you're pro-abortion, you're going to vote for the Democrat. If you're pro-life, you're going to vote for the Republican. They've made sure, the parties have made sure that they each have cleansed themselves of anybody on the Democrat side. You can't be pro-life, and on the Republican side, you can't be pro-choice. So they've made it very stark, so that if it's really that important of an issue, you're already voting for your guy or girl. You know, it's not going to affect it.
All right, we've got to keep moving on here. Of course, we just found out, or perhaps we already knew, but had a better sense of Ohio's juvenile prison system being in terrible shape. The month-long investigation by the Columbus Dispatch and its affiliated newspapers found a system plagued by violence, facilities severely understaffed, children's medical and educational needs neglected, and nearly half of incarcerated kids released soon back behind bars. Hours after that report was published, Governor DeWine formed a task force to study the issue. Laura Bischoff, you were one of a few reporters who were working on this long investigation. Tell us how this took shape and your findings.
You know, more than a year ago, there was a riot at Indian River Juvenile Detention Center up in Stark County, and we covered that. We had already teed up some stories about staff problems, and that kind of made us think, like, well, what else is going on in the juvenile centers, in particular at the local level as well. And so we decided to kind of use the collaboration across the Gannett network. So we had the Cincinnati Enquirer, the Columbus Dispatch, the Akron Beacon Journal, Canton Repository. We all kind of pulled together and started to look at what's going on at the local level and also across the State Department of Youth Services. And, you know, this was an 8-month endeavor. We put all the stories up without a paywall. We want people to see what's going on. Like you said, there's just chronic and persistent staff shortages across the system. And that leads to problems like prolonged lockdowns of kids being held in their rooms. At Indian River, they don't have toilets or sinks in their rooms, and so at some, you know, in some points, kids don't get out for bathroom breaks, and they're urinating and defecating in their cells, which is just gross. And then when they come out of their cells, you know, they don't want to go back in, and there's violent clashes, and the gangs call all kinds of assaults on staff and on other kids. And so employees are fearful, kids are fearful. And on top of that, on the professional staff, half of their behavioral health jobs are open, even though 3/4 of the kids require mental health treatment. About 1/4 of the teacher positions are open, and yet about half of the kids require some sort of individualized special education. So there's a lot of problems that kind of get daisy-chained together. They all are linked. We found some really serious injuries at Franklin County Juvenile Detention Center. Demarion Allen, a 15-year-old kid, he was supposed to be kept apart from other kids as he was awaiting transfer to the Department of Youth Services. He had a fight with a kid, it lasted only 10 seconds. It changed his life forever. He's paralyzed from the chest down. We were able to follow him to physical therapy and visit his home, his family at home, and it's really changed the life for everybody in his family.
How does the situation in Ohio's youth prisons compare to other states? Do we know? Is it, or is that hard to fathom?
You know, if you look at news coverage across the states, Michigan, Tennessee, Illinois, everybody's seeing problems with their youth incarceration system. A lot of it is linked to staff shortages. These are incredibly difficult jobs to handle. I mean, you are, you know, risking injury every time you go into work. These kids are pretty volatile. They've come from very traumatized backgrounds, and they've done some very violent acts. That's why they're incarcerated. But it's hard to compare state to state. One of the biggest measures is how many kids come back are reincarcerated. It's called the recidivism rate. And in Ohio, within 3 years of release, 43% of kids either return to the youth system or they go to the adult system. And you can't compare Ohio's recidivism rate to others because they measure it in different ways.
Certainly some sobering statistics, and we'll see what happens as our state leaders wrangle with this question. Well, it's time for our final off-the-record parting shots. I know it's a bit of a tough transition there, Brian. We'll start with you.
So our attention is going to turn to redistricting. It's going to be on the ballot next year, and I think they'll get the signatures, and I think that's going to be a real focus for the next year.
Bob?
And you mentioned political campaign commercials starting up, but the ones that we're not probably going to see in Ohio this cycle are presidential ads. Joe Biden's already up and he's advertising, but all the states he's advertising are Georgia, Nevada, Michigan, all the swing states. So I think for the first time in my memory, we're not going to have any presidential ads in Ohio.
Well, yeah, it seems as though the days of the kingmaker state of Ohio, we'll see. Joe?
Well, keeping with redistricting here, you know, the ballot board is going to be looking at it on this next week and trying to decide, you know, what they should have on the petition language going forward. And I think that could be a battle based on the fact that it's a Republican-dominated board, and this is really something that the Republicans don't want. So. And
last but not least, Laura.
Just circling back to the youth prison problem, I just want to say what we tried to do was shine a light on a closed system, and I think it demonstrates that good public service journalism is alive in Ohio, and
it was excellent.
Thank you.
It really was.
Agreed.
And a quick reminder about WOSU Public Media's new podcast telling the story of Ohio's biggest bribery scandal. The Power Grab tells the Larry Householder nuclear bailout scandal. You'll hear Householder and his associates plot to collect bribes in their own words thanks to secret FBI recordings. Get the Power Grab wherever you get your podcasts. And that's going to do it for Columbus on the Record this week. Continue the conversation online at wosu.org/COTR. I'm Matthew Rand. Have a great week.